So imagine for a second that everything you thought you knew about getting an A in middle school was just completely irrelevant.
Oh, yeah. Like totally thrown out the window.
Right, like no points for just showing up,
Right.
no extra credit because you have really neat handwriting,
Exactly.
and definitely no, sliding by just because you quietly participated and turned in a big stack of worksheets.
Yeah, that economy of compliance is gone.
It really is.
Mhm.
Because today's deep dive takes us completely out of that traditional cinder block classroom vibe, and it drops us straight into an Alaskan field station.
Which is such a cool mental image, by the way.
It is. The air is crisp, the focus is super sharp, and these seventh graders are basically ditching the old school grade book to build actual, verifiable portfolios of evidence.
Yeah, and it's a profound shift, really, in how we think about the entire purpose of school. I mean, you are moving away from that system where students just collect points like they're arcade tickets or something.
Right, I remember doing exactly that.
We all did. But here, they're moving into this environment where they actually have to act like junior scientists. They have to validate their own skills.
Which sounds, incredibly daunting for a 12-year-old, but also deeply necessary.
Oh, absolutely.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack exactly how this works by looking at the Bioforge badge system. And this is specifically designed for 7th grade life science.
It is, yeah.
And I just want to say right up front to everyone listening, whether you are, an educator trying to overhaul a broken grading system, or maybe a parent who is just completely mystified by how your kid is being evaluated these days.
Or even if you're just fascinated by how humans actually learn.
Yes, this whole thing completely redefines what it actually means to master a subject.
It really does.
Yeah.
And to really understand Bioforge, we have to start with its central philosophy, which is that badges in this system are not prizes.
Okay, wait, not prizes.
No, not at all. And that is honestly the hardest habit for people to break. They are not like rewards for finishing a reading assignment or, just having a good attitude during a lab.
So what are they then?
They're verifiable, metadata-rich credentials. So they're a visual representation of a validated skill. They show what a student can actually do, not just what they sat through.
I want to push on that immediately, actually, because if learning is this grand expedition and we're leaning into this Alaskan wilderness metaphor here, we need a map.
Right. You definitely need a map.
Because a 12-year-old can't just wander into the woods and start validating skills at random. So how does a student actually navigate this? Like, where do they even begin?
Well, they begin with a very specific layered architecture. The learning pathway in Bioforge has distinct destinations, and then it has checkpoints along the way.
Okay, so what's the destination?
The ultimate destinations are the standards. But Bioforge doesn't just pull from like one generic national list of standards.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it draws from the NGSS, the Next Generation Science Standards, sure, but it also layers in Alaska State Standards, District Learning Standards, and most uniquely, the Alaska Cultural Standards.
Oh, man, I'm so glad you brought up the cultural standards because when I was reading through the source material, I was just fascinated by that part.
It's incredible, right?
It is. It's bringing in traditional ecological knowledge or tech and sitting it right next to modern biological investigation. But I was honestly kind of struggling to picture what that actually looks like in practice.
Sure, it can sound a bit abstract at first.
Yeah, like how does a 7th grader actually combine, genetics with local heritage?
Well, let's ground it in a really concrete example.
Yeah.
So say the class is studying ecosystem dynamics and population cycles.
Okay.
In a traditional classroom in the lower 48, they might just read a textbook chapter about wolves and rabbits.
Right, the classic predator-prey graph.
Exactly. But in Bioforge, utilizing those Alaska cultural standards, a student might investigate the historical data of a local salmon run instead.
Oh, wow, so it's hyper-local.
Extremely local.
Yeah.
So they aren't just looking at the biology of the fish in a vacuum. They are anchoring that science in local consequential phenomena.
Which means they might be, looking at indigenous community observations too?
Yes. They are actively consulting indigenous observations about river health over the last century. They are taking scientific principles and applying them to something that directly impacts their community's food security and cultural practices.
Oh, I see. So the science isn't just this abstract thing happening in a sterile lab somewhere. It's happening in their literal backyard, and it actually matters.
Exactly. It makes the learning incredibly high stakes, but in a good way.
So those are the ultimate destinations. But you also mentioned checkpoints.
Right. So Along the way to those big standard destinations, you have what are called performance expectations.
Okay.
And you can think of these as the critical milestones on that expedition.
Wait, so if I hit a checkpoint, like if I meet a performance expectation, doesn't that mean I get a badge for that specific milestone right then? Like I passed the checkpoint, hand over the hardware.
Yeah, and that right there is a very common misconception. It trips up a lot of educators who are transitioning to this system.
Really? So I don't get a badge for that?
Usually, no. Performance expectations are not usually badges by themselves. They function much more like complex checklist items.
Complex in what way?
Well, in the next generation science standards, every single performance expectation is three-dimensional.
Three-dimensional. Okay, break that down for me.
So it combines scientific knowledge, which they call disciplinary core ideas, with science and engineering practices, which is stuff like analyzing data and then cross-cutting concepts like identifying cause and effect.
I mean, that sounds way too dense to master in one single sitting.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Because they are so multidimensional, a student might actually work toward one single performance expectation through several different lessons, investigations, projects, and revisions. It takes weeks.
So I'm kind of thinking about this like training for a marathon.
Oh, I like that. Go on.
If I decide to run a marathon, my daily 3-mile jogs, they build my capacity, right? Like I'm actively working on my cardiovascular endurance, my pacing, my form.
Right, you're putting in the work.
Yeah, but no one is handing me the marathon finisher's medal on a random Tuesday just because I successfully jogged 3 miles.
That analogy hits the nail right on the head. The daily assignments, the hands-on learning experiences, the reading, all of those things build the capacity to do the work.
They are the daily jogs.
Exactly. They transition a student from passively learning about a topic to actively figuring out a complex phenomenon. They're building cognitive muscle.
Right.
But the daily practice itself is not the final proof of mastery. The badge is the verification that you can run the whole race using all the skills you've built up over time.
Which brings us to, honestly, what I think is the most critical friction point in this whole system.
The grading.
Yeah, because if doing the daily work doesn't equal a badge, what does? When I hear badges in a middle school context, my brain immediately goes to, like, a loyalty punch card at a coffee shop.
Buy 10 coffees, get one free.
Exactly. Do 10 worksheets, get a sticker. Stay quiet for 5 days in a row, get a badge. How does Bioforge avoid becoming just, as the sources actually call it, digital sticker charts in tiny lab coats?
That's a great question. And the designers of Bioforge were incredibly wary of that exact trap. To prevent that sticker chart phenomenon, the system is just ruthlessly explicit about what does not earn a badge.
Okay, at me. What doesn't earn a badge?
You do not get a badge for mere attendance.
Wow.
You don't get one for participation alone either. You cannot earn a badge by finishing a single worksheet or just by copying a diagram the teacher drew on the whiteboard.
So no participation trophies.
None. And you definitely can't earn them by just accumulating points over time, like the arcade ticket thing we mentioned earlier.
I want to pause on that because I want you to think about how radical that is. I mean, think about your own middle school experience. How many grades were padded because you turned in all your homework on time, even if you didn't really grasp the concepts?
Oh, all the time.
Or because you drew a really beautiful title page for your science report?
The system actively strips all of that away. You do not get a badge for submitting really attractive, visually pleasing work if you don't actually understand the science behind it.
So literally no points for neat handwriting if the science is fundamentally flawed.
Correct.
Which is great, but then what is the currency here? If compliance doesn't buy you anything, what does?
The only currency is portfolio evidence. Badges recognize a defensible pattern of demonstrated learning. It all comes down to what the student actually puts into their portfolio to prove what they can do.
Got it.
And to organize this evidence, Bioforge uses specific badge families that map onto those 3 dimensions of learning we just talked about.
Let's dive into those families, actually. Let's try to picture them in action. What are a 7th grader's actual goals here?
So the goals are categorized to ensure holistic scientific literacy. First up, you have the science and engineering practices badges.
Okay.
These are basically the doing of science. So can you mathematically analyze data? Can you develop a predictive model?
Action-oriented skills.
Right. Then you have the cross-cutting concepts badges. These are the big cognitive lenses. Can you understand how energy flows through an entire system? Can you identify patterns in chaotic data?
Okay, so that's the second family.
Third, you have the disciplinary core IDs badges. These cover the actual biological content stuff like genetics, cell structures, or ecosystem dynamics.
And then, as we discussed earlier, those are all anchored by the Alaska Cultural Standards badges,
Yes, exactly. Ensuring the science remains tied to local heritage and place-based phenomena.
which is so important.
It is. And then, as the student masters these individual elements, they can earn unit badges, which synthesize a whole topic.
Like putting the pieces of a puzzle together.
Exactly. And at the very top of the hierarchy, you have mastery or capstone badges. And those require the student to bring multiple disparate skills together over a long-term project.
Okay, the structure makes total sense on a theoretical level, but I need to see the gears turning. If I physically or digitally open a seventh grader's Bioforge portfolio, what evidence am I actually looking at?
You are going to see a massive variety of artifacts. You might see the results of a deep, multi-week investigation.
Like what?
Well, for example, let's say a student is using the Bioforge data wall to track the ecosystem dynamics of a simulated area called Sector 7.
Sector 7. I love that it sounds like a sci-fi movie.
Right. It creates that sense of adventure.
Yeah.
So in their portfolio for Sector 7, you won't just see a basic multiple choice test. You'll see hand-drawn models of population cycles, and they'll probably have eraser marks all over them because they've been revised over and over.
Oh, that's awesome.
You'll see graphs plotting predator-prey changes. You'll find detailed field journal entries where the student is actually wrestling with anomalous data. They might even have engineering designs for how to stabilize a collapsing food web.
I would imagine there is a pretty heavy emphasis on writing, too, right? Because they have to communicate these findings somehow.
Huge emphasis on writing, specifically through CER explanations. That's claim, evidence, reasoning.
Claim, evidence, reasoning.
That framework is the absolute bedrock of their communication. A student has to make a claim about what is happening in Sector 7, provide specific empirical data from their graphs as that evidence, and then explicitly use scientific principles, the reasoning, to connect the two.
So they really can't just guess.
No. You'll also find formal arguments from evidence, research presentations, and honestly, most importantly, reflections on their own learning process.
Okay, here is a mechanical question that jumped out at me while I was looking at the source material. Let's say a student produces this amazing, incredibly detailed lab report on that Sector 7 ecosystem. It's got the graphs, it's got the CER, it's got a beautiful model. Can that one single artifact act like a Swiss Army knife? Like, can one really good piece of evidence earn them 3 different badges at the exact same time?
It absolutely can.
Really?
Yeah. The formal term in assessment design for that is standard stacking. One strong, multifaceted artifact can and should support several different badges.
That seems really efficient.
It is highly efficient, and it mirrors real-world science. Think about a published paper. It demonstrates data analysis, domain knowledge, and communication skills all at once.
But wait, there has to be a trap there. I feel like a savvy middle schooler is just going to write the names of 5 different badges at the top of their paper and be like, boom, I did it all. Give me my credentials.
And that is exactly the trap. Simply naming several standards at the top of a paper does not make the evidence strong. And this brings us to a massive problem in traditional grading, which researchers call the risk of obscuring evidence.
Obscuring evidence.
Or, to use the really technical term, construct irrelevant variants.
Construct irrelevant variance. Okay, that sounds like a term we definitely need to decode. What does that actually mean for the student?
It basically means that a traditional holistic grade often hides what a student actually knows.
Give me an example.
Okay, imagine a student writes a brilliant scientific analysis of the Sector 7 ecosystem. Their understanding of the biology is just flawless. But their grammar is terrible, their paragraphs are disorganized, and their spelling is a complete mess.
Okay, I can picture that perfectly.
Right. So in a traditional classroom, a teacher looks at that paper, averages the brilliant science with the terrible writing, and gives the student a C.
Which tells nobody anything useful. The student thinks they are bad at science, and the parents don't realize the issue is actually literacy.
Exactly. The writing skills, which is the construct irrelevant variance in this case, obscured the scientific evidence.
Oh, I get it now.
Bioforge eliminates this through modular scoring. If a student wants to use one Swiss Army knife artifact to earn 3 different badges, they must explicitly explain what their work demonstrates for each specific standard.
Wait, how does that look in practice, though?
The student has to basically pull their own work apart. They have to point to their report and say, this graph right here, and only this graph, is my evidence for the data analysis badge. And this specific paragraph over here is my evidence for the ecosystems badge.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the learning has to be visible, granular, and totally defensible by the student.
I have to admit, that requires a level of metacognition of like thinking about their own thinking that seems almost impossibly high for a 12-year-old. I mean, I know adults who can't parse their own work that clearly,
Is a very high bar.
which brings up a huge anxiety for me. If the standard for evidence is this rigorous and they can't hide behind a neat title page, what happens when a student inevitably misses the mark?
That is the million-dollar question. Because in a traditional school, the answer is devastating, right? You bomb a big project, you get a 0 or a 50%.
Right, and that number averages into your final grade.
And mathematically, you might never recover from it no matter how much you learn later in the semester.
Exactly. You spend the rest of the year trying to dig out of a hole, which usually just leads to the kid checking out completely. Like, why try if the math says you've already failed?
Exactly. The traditional system relies on a penalty model. But Bioforge is built on a mastery learning system, which requires a complete psychological reset regarding failure.
How so?
If a student submits that Sector 7 artifact and the teacher looks at it and says, this graph doesn't actually prove you understand data analysis, it is not a failure. It triggers what the system calls the not yet process.
Not yet. That is such a powerful linguistic shift.
Isn't it?
It implies inevitable success, just, on a different timeline.
It is brilliant from a psychological standpoint. It tells the student, you just aren't there yet. And the system immediately offers corrective pathways instead of punishments.
So what do?
The student is given the opportunity to revise their work based on the feedback. They can go back to their portfolio, add new evidence, try the skill again on a completely different task, or sometimes they just need to sit down with a teacher and verbally explain their thinking more clearly.
Think about how much that mirrors our own lives, especially in the adult workplace.
Oh, 100%.
I mean, think about the last time you handed a major project to your boss or submitted a proposal to a client. Rarely does it get accepted perfectly on the very first try. Usually it comes back covered in red ink or with a list of revisions.
Yep.
But if your boss hands you back a report with critiques, you don't get an F and lose your job. You revise the report. You gather better data.
That is precisely how actual scientific work happens, too. Scientists do not throw away their entire careers if a hypothesis fails, or if a peer review panel tears apart their methodology.
No, they go back to the lab.
They revise the experiment.
Okay.
In Bioforge, feedback is an inherent expected part of the badge earning process. It is not a deduction of points.
But getting a 7th grader to accept that feedback without completely melting down, I mean, that has to be a massive hurdle for the teachers. Middle schoolers are notoriously sensitive to criticism.
They are, absolutely. But that sensitivity is largely a product of the traditional grading system. The shift to a not yet model does something incredible for a student's psychology over time.
What does it do?
It removes the stigma of cumulative failure. When you remove the threat of a permanent 0, you lower what psychologists call ego protection barriers.
Oh, I've seen this. This is the kid who pretends not to care because they are terrified of trying their hardest and still failing.
Yes.
It's the student who, finishes a 45-minute exam in 5 minutes, slams it on the desk and says, "This is stupid," because acting bored is safer than admitting they don't understand the material.
That is ego protection in a nutshell. But when a missed standard just means revise, that defensive posture melts away. Students stop playing the game of compliance.
They stop trying to game the system.
Right. They stop trying to reverse engineer the teacher's brain by asking, is this exactly what you want? And they start focusing on true understanding. They begin to take intellectual risks because they know the field journal is a safe space to be wrong on the way to being right.
It transforms the teacher from a judge handing down a sentence into like a coach reviewing game tape. Hey, your form was off on the swing. Let's adjust your grip and try again.
It changes the entire dynamic of the classroom. The teacher is no longer the sole arbiter of points. They are a collaborator, helping the student build a rock-solid case for their own competence.
This has been such an eye-opening journey. Let's bring this entire Bioforge system together into one cohesive framework for everyone listening right now.
Yeah, let's do it.
Earlier, we talked about the CER framework claim, evidence, and reasoning that the students use for their science experiments. I actually think we can look at the badge system itself through that exact same lens.
Oh, that is a fantastic way to synthesize it. How would you map that out?
Well, in Bioforge, requesting a badge is essentially making a claim about your own learning. The student claims, "I know how to analyze complex data."
Right.
Then, the portfolio serves as the evidence, the revised models, the ecosystem graphs, the field notes.
Yep.
And finally, the student's own modular explanation of their work provides the reasoning. It is the connective tissue that proves the evidence actually supports the claim.
It is the scientific method, applied directly to the student's own cognitive development. They are literally engineering their own education.
Which is a profound level of empowerment for a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
And it leads me to a final thought I want to leave you with today.
Go for it.
We spent this time exploring how 7th graders are thriving in an Alaskan field station environment, where they are evaluated purely on verifiable evidence of their skills.
Right. Real evidence.
They aren't getting by on mere attendance. They aren't skating through on compliance or participating politely or relying on neat handwriting to mask a lack of knowledge. They have to ruthlessly, repeatedly prove what they can do.
They are held to a standard of authentic competence that, frankly, many adults aren't even asked to meet.
Which raises a really provocative question for everyone listening. If a classroom of 12-year-olds can handle that level of accountability, autonomy, and feedback, why is so much of the adult professional world still rely on the equivalent of middle school sticker charts?
Oh, wow. That is a great question.
I mean, think about your own workplace for a second. How much of your perceived value is based on just seat time?
Just being at your desk?
Exactly. How many meetings are you praised for attending, even if you contributed absolutely nothing? How many annual performance evaluations are based on simply looking busy or maintaining polite compliance, rather than producing a defensible portfolio of actual impact?
It challenges us to look at how we measure value, competence, and success outside the walls of a school.
It really does. How might we redesign our own adult workplaces to look a little more like that Bioforge classroom? A space where the air is crisp, the expectations are utterly transparent, failure is just a not yet, and we are all focused on gathering actual evidence of our work rather than just punching a clock.
I love that.
It is definitely something to chew on during your next commute or, your next staff meeting. Keep questioning your own learning, keep revising your work, and start collecting evidence of your own mastery. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.